Welcome, man. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a great one for you here today. Gonna talk some NBA and the Greek Freak. But before we get to that, you know what we got to do. Make sure you go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell for me. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, make sure you reach out and grab that wherever your audio podcasts are available. Just type in the Format Podcast and do a little search. We should come up. Make sure you leave us a comment on YouTube or on your podcast platform. All that helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Finally, if you enjoy the show, make sure you share it. All right, let's get right to it. So today, something I wanted to talk about is something I've been thinking about, obviously, with the NBA season underway, and player that I really enjoy watching a lot, not necessarily because I put him in a certain category, and we'll get to that in a second, but just loving how he plays because of the effort and not getting involved in so much of the soap opera aspect of the modern NBA, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo, aka the Greek Freak. Got a lot of love for this guy. So, as you know, he's been a pretty big topic of discussion during the offseason and maybe for the last few years. Obviously, a Defensive Player of the Year, a 2-time MVP, now a champion, and a guy that a lot of people who are supposed pundits, what have you, are starting to move quickly up the all-time NBA leaderboards. Now, I don't necessarily buy too much into that thing where people place players and all that, because obviously you guys, if you know my show, if you've been watching it, you know that my list is a little different from a lot of other guys. And again, those listings are so entirely subjective. I mean, in my estimation, there's one position that shouldn't be. That's number one, and that's obviously Michael Jordan. But totally different argument, different discussion for a different day, and so that's fine. But yeah, a lot of people are really starting to move him up the leaderboards in terms of what he's been able to do. And if you know me, again, I'm really iffy on that in terms of weighing today's players and what they've done and where that places them in the all-time pantheon of NBA greats, just based on the fact that the rules are so different today. It's so much easier to put up astronomical numbers. The game is played so much differently. Defenses, for the most part, been legislated out. The physicality is gone from the game. So it's so much easier to do so many things. And, you know, most people will argue that a great player would be great in any era. I'm not necessarily a proponent of that. Quick example, there's no way you're telling me that James Harden would still be great in the 80s or the 90s. It just wouldn't be. I mean, his game, the way he, dribbles the ball so much, holds the ball so much, more so when he was in his prime, like the major Houston years, took so many bad shots, obviously traveled consistently with the quote-unquote gather step on his step back jump shot. Now, you got to make the shots, I get it, but there's just so much that goes into it. And my point is, there's no way you're telling me that in the 90s he's getting away with that, especially in a situation where not only are you not shooting 10 plus 3-pointers a game, a coach will yank you for that, in a position where the paint is much more crowded, where you're not getting away with all those BS foul calls to get all those extra free points, and in a league where he would also have to defend at the 2-guard position. He'd have to chase Reggie Miller around. He'd have to deal with Ray Allen, Kerry Kittles, Mitch Richmond, of course, Michael Jordan, later in the decade, Kobe Bryant, although, he played against Kobe a fair amount, but, a young, super spry Kobe. But the point I'm trying to make is, there's no way you can convince me that some of these players today that are putting up these insane numbers would be the same players back then. But again, that's another discussion for another day, not necessarily the argument. But today, what I want to talk about is Giannis. And we know that we heard comments, speaking of James Harden, maybe a couple of years ago, we heard comments from him basically talking about, Giannis is basically 7 feet tall. All he has to do is jump and dunk. He doesn't have a lot of skills. Okay. During the offseason, we heard Kevin Durant make comments towards Giannis's skill level or lack thereof. We heard, obviously, Gilbert Arenas being the most famous one on his podcast and on numerous other interviews, double and triple down on the fact that he believes that Giannis is not a skilled player. Giannis doesn't understand the game. And that, that's subjective in terms of what type of offenses teams are using, what type of defenses he's facing, et cetera, et cetera. Gilbert also made the ridiculous comment that he doesn't know how to take care of his body. I don't know if Gilbert has recently lost his sight and isn't able to see Giannis, but that was a crazy comment. But Point I'm trying to make is, oh, let me also mention, we also hear stuff from some of the older school players. We heard Charles Oakley say that Giannis would be a bench warmer back in the day. He'd come off the bench. I don't know if I go that far, but I also don't believe that Giannis would do the things that he does today in terms of being a 7-footer, pushing the rock down the floor, often going coast to coast, going straight down the lane with very little resistance. I don't see that back then, obviously, because let's take the year 1990. You've got a whole bunch of elite shot blockers in the league. If we even push it to 1994, you've still got them. You've got, Olajuwon, you've got David Robinson, you've got Dikembe Mutombo. All three of those dudes are top 10 shot blockers. You got Patrick Ewing, another top 10 shot blocker. So you got Shaquille O'Neal, another top 10 shot blocker. So the point I'm trying to make, and of course, back then, you also had a whole bunch of true power forwards. The floor wasn't super spread the way it is now, making veritable highways to the basket, okay? So Giannis would he would not get away with a lot of the things that he gets away with now. With that said, okay, if Giannis came up back then when he came into the league, if he came into the league with that body at he was 6'9", I think, when he came into the league. But if he had come into the league with that body, immediately what they do is, of course, they get him on a major strength and conditioning program, which you can see he's undertaken since he's come into the NBA. You get him bigger, you get him stronger. That's no problem, because obviously his frame can handle it and he's got the work ethic to handle it. But the difference would be they would teach him how to play the low block, really teach him how to play the post in terms of post defense. And not saying he can't do that now, but there's much less of a need for post defense in the modern NBA. And they would also teach him much better post offense in terms of footwork, post moves, etc., which to some extent he has begun to develop more of. Giannis is one of those guys that you see every year he comes back improved in some facet of his game, right? What I'm trying to say here is we get all this commentary about his skills, right, or lack thereof. So I'm wondering, what exactly does that mean? Giannis is now consistently averaging, between 5.5 and 6.5 assists per game. He's been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. So he's the primary ball handler on his team. He's the primary decision maker. Okay, is making solid decisions and getting assists and passing the ball, is that a skill? Because it seems to me Giannis has got that. Okay, cool. We see Giannis, he's been Defensive Player of the Year. He's multiple-time All-NBA defense. Now, this is interesting because you got to wonder, people don't even mention that when they talk about the skills. I think when they talk about the skills, they want to see the flashy stuff. They want to see you shoot 40% from three. They want to see you dribble all day like Kyrie Irving, and coincidentally carry a lot too. But anyway, they want to see you do all the fancy dribbling and cross people over and make people fall and blah, 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 waste the shot clock and all this nonsense, right? They consider that being skilled. And when I brought up Kyrie Irving's name, I'm not saying he's not skilled. He's extremely skilled, 50, 40, 90 guy, great handle. Again, that great handle, caveat for me, because he does a lot of carrying. But hey, if the modern NBA allows him to do it, so be it. But, he can shoot the ball, he can pass the ball when he decides to, right? But yeah, back to Giannis. Is defense not a skill because he's a Defensive Player of the Year? Now, some people would say that award doesn't mean anything because it's media voted. That's fine. But we do see Giannis consistently make the effort to defend, both on the team level and on the individual level. Okay, so we know that Giannis can defend. That's a skill. We're seeing him now. He's adding things to his game. I actually saw him not the last playoffs, I believe the playoffs before, but if not then, definitely last year's playoffs. He started adding a one-legged fadeaway a la Dirk Nowitzki to his game. Now, the weird thing is sometimes he doesn't always need that, and that, again, that's a problem with the modern player in terms of, I don't know why you're shooting one-legged fallaways. If you're Giannis, you're bigger and stronger than most of the people defending you. Get a couple of post moves on the low block, they wouldn't be able to deal with you, so you don't really need to be shooting those. But again, problem with the modern NBA, the way it's coached and the lack of post offense. But hey, he's Nigerian, so go hook up with Dream and see if he can help you out. But anyway, so we talk about Giannis. He's developing a little bit of a post game. He's developing an improved mid-range jump shot, right? Again, he's passing the ball. He's going to continue to defend. And this season, again, it's only 5 games in. He's shooting 35% from three. If he can maintain about 35% from three, man, the league is not going to know what to do with this guy. They're just not. And so I'm wondering, here's the thing. If he has so little skill, right? and his skills are such an issue, why is it nobody can stop this guy? In all seriousness, like, he's been getting busy for years now. You know he doesn't have skills. Why is it so difficult to keep him from doing what he's doing? That's what I don't get. So it just seems to me like you have an issue with the fact of the way he plays, right? It may not be pretty enough for a lot of people. Okay, cool. But he won, right? He wins, and he wins as the main guy. He's not winning as being a guy who just happens to be on the team. He wins as the guy, right? You may have an issue with the way he plays. Let's be real here. This is America. We would rather see great American players. I've said it before. It doesn't matter how great you are. If you're a foreign-born player, you're not going to get the same love as if you're homegrown. That's just what it is, okay? So you got a guy, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? A hard name to say. That's why a lot of people say Greek freak. I mean, he is a freak, but Greek freak, it rhymes. It's easy to monetize, all that good stuff. It's easy to market, but you know, it's also more palatable than his, long African / Greek name, right? So that's less palatable. He's not an American. So we find all these reasons to denigrate what Giannis is doing. Meanwhile, we make up some silly thing about him not having skills. So I'm wondering, what would it take for him to have enough skills for those people who are saying what they're saying to stop talking about it? I'm not a dude who uses the word hater lightly. I rarely use it because I just think it's a low information response in general. I think people just say that because, they don't have a response. Oh, you don't think LeBron is the GOAT? You're a hater. Okay. You try to have the discussions with people, they don't have an answer. All it is you're a hater. Okay. All right, cool. So 5 games into the season, and again, only 5 games, very small sample size, but you look at Giannis, he's averaging 34.5 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, 5-point assists per game. He's 60% from the floor. He's 35% from 3, right? He's got 3 steals, 8 blocks. I mean, he's doing it all. So you have to wonder at this point, like, what are the skills that people think Giannis is missing, and how much of said skills would it take for them to back down off of those comments? All right, that's all I got today. What I would love to know from you, again, what are the skills people think Giannis is missing, and how much of those skills would it take for them to back down off of those comments? Leave that in the comment section for me. If you're on the audio podcast, do the same. Yeah, remember, if you love the pod, go ahead, share it with everyone else, and I'm out. Peace.